There's a lot of things in life that we take for granted. We take for granted that the sun will always shine, that our heart will always beat, and that there will always be plenty of food for us to eat. Healthy food, junk food, it doesn't matter. It will always be plentiful. Well, sometimes we can see in an eclipse that those belief systems can be challenged. But the thing with an eclipse, there's many stages of the eclipse before we go into darkness. But in order to be able to see those stages, we do need special lenses so that we can see each stage. So the stages of an eclipse appear to be sort of subtle. Most of us don't even notice these stages, where just color changes, saturates, and mutes. And if we pay attention to nature, they know what's going on. But many of us don't even pay any attention to these stages. And then the final stage is darkness, and that gets our attention. Are they bringing us and showing us the final stage of an eclipse? I would suggest that yes, we are headed for food shortages. So put on your lenses and let me show you what is going on in our world today. Armstrong Economics said that the next famine will begin in 2022. And they warned that we are currently reducing the food supply at a time when we should be stockpiling it. And there is a study done on PubMed that shows it takes about 2 years after an economic shock to see food shortages. And I'm sure none of us had to be told that it is the most vulnerable in our society that are disproportionately affected. So, the concept of food shortages have gone from theoretical to real. That's from Investment Watch. I'm going to go over a few reasons why this has happened. 2021 has seen devastating weather all around the globe. There have been ice storms in some rare places, especially Texas and Arkansas, Kentucky, and Tennessee. There have been severe earthquakes in Iran, Argentina, Turkey, Asia, New Zealand, Japan, and the Philippines. And there have been severe flooding in the mid and southeast of the USA, Mexico and South America, Europe, the Middle East, Asia, Indonesia, and a very rare snowstorm in Israel. What is going on? Well, have you heard about the grand solar minimum? Most of us have not. But you can go to this website, thegrandsolarminimum.com, and learn about it. Because scientists are telling us that the sun is heading into a new solar minimum right now. Now, despite loud claims that man-made CO2 is somehow driving the climate, both history and science demonstrate that the most influential driver of planetary climate is actually the sun and its predictable cycles. NASA is reporting that there is a solar minimum coming, and so is the American Thinker. And they made an interesting comment, and they said, this coming grand solar minimum will have much more impact on the environment than anything we puny humans can do. So what is a solar minimum? It's actually sunspots. And this is showing you 400 years of sunspot observations. You can see that the most severe solar minimum was the Maunder minimum, around 1650. We had another one, a Dalton minimum and a modern maximum. But they believe that we are heading into one that is similar to the Maunder minimum. What happens is temperatures drop globally, and this leads to shorter growing seasons, and it brings food shortages. But these minimums create both droughts and floods simultaneously around the world. That leads to harvest failures, and then we have wars and revolutions. Are we really seeing any of this? Yes, we really are. In Minnesota in the spring, they had an unusual freeze injury to their corn. Canada is reporting late spring frosts that is destroying their fruit. And India is suffering its coldest June temperature ever recorded. Now, how is this affecting us in the western United States? Well, drought. This is how severe it is in the western United States. Notice it is affecting the agricultural growing regions of our country. And then you get interesting articles like this one, where they're saying a water crisis could not be worse on the Oregon-California border. But if you read the article, you see that the water crisis went from dire to catastrophic as federal regulators shut off irrigation water to farmers from a critical reservoir, and they will not send extra water to the dying salmon downstream. This should be making you question what is going on. But let me give you an action point. No matter where you live, make sure you have access to clean water. And if you live in an area that could flood, make sure you take the necessary precautions in advance. And what about our dying bee population, also known as colony collapse disorder? Experts believe that we have lost a third of our bee population just in the last 15 years. If we lose our bees, we lose our food supply. No apples, cherries, onions, celery, cabbage, almonds, and blueberries, and many other things. Why are they dying? Well, experts believe that it is the bee-killing pesticides called neonics that are sprayed on the crops that are 6,000 times more deadly to bees than DDT. And the other problem is the proliferation of genetically modified plants that do not provide the nutrition that will keep these bees disease-free. So this complex global supply chain has been disrupted to an unprecedented level, and our shipping prices just keep rising globally. Why is this happening? Well, around the world, the pandemic closed ports and factories, reduced the workforce, and it stagnated production. This has just halted global shipping, and now we've got containers stuck around the world in wrong places. And it's actually taking longer to unload containers than it is taking to cross the Pacific. Here's an article from American Shipper. They are saying that the rates for container ships are off the chart at $135,000 a day. The market has become absolutely frenzied. There's more and more inquiry every single day, and people are panicking, and that is driving up the costs of just about everything we use. This is the Drewry World Container Index. It measures the price of a shipping container. Currently, it's up 282% with no end in sight. So what is going on with the global food supply that is causing the container crisis? Countries around the world are taking frantic steps to secure their food. Argentina, Brazil, Russia, Ukraine, and China are refusing to allow the world market to draw their crops, and many other countries are limiting their exports to the rest of the world. The chart on the right is showing you that China is implementing Joseph of Egypt-like policies. They are not exporting food at all. They are just importing it in very large quantities. So what are we doing? Well, the USA exports more food to the world than any other country. We predominantly export to Canada, Mexico, Japan, and China. And we keep committing more and more food, even though we too are experiencing agricultural decline, just like the rest of the world. Some of our farmers in Idaho have sold all of their 2021 crops to other countries, and many have committed their 22 crops also. Now, we have always been a very compassionate people, and we've always been able to afford to be. But are we sure that we can take care of our own? So just as this reduction in the world's volume of food, it is pushing us towards a crisis level. But we've always had a grain reserve. Well, historically, that is true. But the U.S. government sold all of our grain reserves in the 1996 Farm Bill. The U.S. has nothing in the emergency food pantry. There is no cheese, no butter, no dry milk powder, no grains, or anything else left in reserve. And this was produced just last week. It is showing you the U.S. spring wheat market. You can see that lower line is this year compared to the last 8 years. It is a little grim. So what's the action point? If you have ever assumed that you would store long-term grains, or if you need more, now is the time to do it, because your window of opportunity is closing. So, what can your family do? Meat is just not important to everyone, but maybe dairy or eggs are. So if it's important to you, you need to store it. If you want meat, store meat. If you want eggs for protein, store scrambled eggs. If you are a baker, store whole egg powder. Store powdered milk. What about our greens? So this is an article from IBM, and it talks about how they want to grow greens. The direction that vegetable and fruit production is moving is into traceability from seed to table. This will be accomplished through AI and blockchain science. And some people like the idea that you could come home and ask Google Home, Alexa, or Siri where your spinach came from. But, so what's the action point here? Grow what your family likes to eat. It's the only way that you can control the nutrients in the soil. Yes, I know it's not easy for everybody, but you can container garden, you can give a little dedicated piece of land, you can build box gardens. There are options. In 1973, Henry Kissinger said, "Who controls the food supply controls the people." Why would you want to control the people? That does not make sense to the average mind. And anyway, what has happened since 1973? I introduced to you the Great Reset. Again, from the World Economic Forum, remember? Pay attention to them. The Great Reset, most of us have probably heard of it at this point. It's being talked at all over. But this is what Klaus Schwab said, the founder. He said the pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reimagine and reset our world. Oh, is that necessary? What the Great Reset really is, in layman's terms, it will be the greatest transfer of wealth and the greatest consolidation of power in the history of mankind. That is ominous. Again, the World Economic Forum has 8 main planks. One of their main planks is that they want a handful of countries to dominate. So how is this going to manifest? Well, the Rockefeller Foundation has put out Reset the Table. This is meeting the moment to transform the U.S. food system. I still ask, why do we need to transform our food system? But this is a plan to revolutionize the global food supply from the top down. This Reset the Table is the plan for the global food system, and it has 3 main objectives. Listen carefully. Number 1, to integrate the food system under a dominant global entity. Number 2, to collectivize and centralize control of the food supply under a global entity. To engender prosperity within the stakeholders of the global entity. Are you starting to see the picture? Who is that dominant global entity? Because it's not the people. Another plank of the Great Reset is, by 2030, you will own nothing and you will be happy. How are they going to do that? I would like you to go and look up BlackRock. BlackRock is the world's largest asset manager with $9 trillion in assets, and they are the leading proponent behind the Great Reset. They're buying up single-family homes at a premium, forcing the middle class to become home renters. This will eliminate the middle class's ability to build wealth. And this is incredible because BlackRock is a Federal Reserve-funded financial institution. Basically, they are printing fiat money to be able to buy up homes so that the people cannot afford them. And it is not just BlackRock. It seems as if all the large financial institutions across the world are doing this. We're seeing this from Lloyd's of London, Vanguard, State Street. This is happening worldwide. Isaiah tells us, I am the Lord your God, who holds your right hand, and I tell you, don't be afraid. I will help you.